The following program contains themes and images that may not be suitable for most audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at Panda Pig Inc. Rate, review, and subscribe. Hello again. This is Panda.
And this is Pig.
And welcome back to the Heart and the Bones podcast.
We're here.
We're here. How does it feel?
We made it.
We made it. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, one and all.
Today we're talking about Bones, Season 1,
Wow,
Episode
Bones?
5.
We're talking about Bones?
Wait.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I know. We didn't plan this at all.
This is
I'm
crazy.
totally pulling this out of nowhere.
Crazy.
The spontaneity.
Okay. We're on to episode 5, correct?
Mm-hmm. A boy in a bush.
A boy in a bush.
Mm-hmm. This
All right.
episode was directed by Jesus Trevino and written by Steve Blackman and Greg Ball. All new names so far.
Wow. Yeah, I don't recognize any of these names from the past episodes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So, kind of fresh.
Fresh. This episode was fresh. Like, wow.
Fresh and sad.
Yes. They were like, you need some sadness. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Boom.
Exactly. So this episode is about at first the missing child, Charlie Sanders, I think is his last name.
I honestly don't remember his last name. I just remember Charlie.
Yes. Charlie's mother has him and 2 foster brothers.
Yeah.
Charlie goes missing. They find his body behind the mall. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that it was the next-door neighbor, the sex offender.
Neighbor.
What did I say?
Next-door neighbor.
The next-door neighbor.
The next-door neighbor.
The next-door neighbor is the one who is basically the sex offender and murderer. And we also find out that Charlie's mother wasn't his biological mother either, that she quasi-kidnapped, rescued him.
Dun, dun, dun.
Mm-hmm. So this episode has a lot of emotions for everyone involved.
They just play with all of our emotions in this one. Not only the case, but the characters.
Yes.
And it's just like, whoa.
Everybody's in their feels in this episode.
Yes. Seriously. Oh, gosh.
So we start off at a lecture hall at American University.
CCC.
Mm-hmm. Bones is giving some sort of lecture.
Yeah.
And you notice at the beginning she's talking about the relationship between the FBI and the Jeffersonian.
Honestly, I wasn't paying attention to the words that were coming out of her mouth because she's just awkwardly leaning over the podium. And all my thoughts were just like, you know, in the show Friends where Ross is giving like his presentation?
Yes.
And you just hear like Rachel and Joey like, huh, he said homo.
That's you watching this?
Or like erectus.
Oh my gosh.
Literally me. I'm like, wait, what's happening? And then obviously I'm paying attention to, wow, there's a laugh track, but it's not matching the audience's faces. So
right. Like they're all dead serious, but the sound is like they're peeing their pants.
Yes. So like here I am watching and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I just know you look very awkward right now.
She looks like
up on this.
She looks like she's breaking her back over the podium, like as if something's hanging above her.
Yes. Honestly, I feel like that's how I am whenever I'm at work. This is how I lean. I just lean over everything. Like, oh, yeah.
We're going to have to get you a cane.
Yes. But yeah, what were you thinking during the lecture? Because I obviously was not paying attention.
So obviously the Jeffersonian is kind of the fictional version of the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
So my curiosity was if the Smithsonian has ever worked with the FBI on cases like they say they do in the show.
Do they?
Well, apparently they do.
Yo, that's kind of cool.
The Smithsonian does have a history with their forensic anthropology department and the FBI. So according to the National Museum of Natural History Smithsonian website, quote, anthropologists at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History have been called upon to analyze human remains for over a century. The remains may represent victims of violence or natural disasters. In these cases, Smithsonian anthropologists work with the FBI, State Department, and other law enforcement agencies to identify the individuals and solve crimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's like, whoa, if you work at the Smithsonian, you're like the real bones here. Like, if you're a forensic anthropologist and you're working with the FBI, like, hey, I'm the real bones. Get it?
Indeed.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, and that's the only thought I had for that part. I mean, obviously, Booth stands up.
I love Booth. Oh my gosh. I want that smirk. He's just like, yeah.
Well, everybody in the audience is asking her questions about her book, and Dr. Ubin's like wagging his finger like, hey, she's a scientist first and an author second.
Right, but then here's Booth like, hey,
pops up.
Book, though.
Even though he's like, he pops up, but like, they look shocked to see him.
Right.
But he's like right there.
He's just chilling right there like, what are you doing here? I'm like, you didn't notice him at all. He's obviously close enough to where you can hear him talk to you, but you have no idea what he's doing there. Exactly. Like, whoa, shock factor. You just somehow popped in here? What?
Yep. And then he's like trying to get confirmation that Bones based Agent Andy Lister on him. Yeah.
The smirk.
I know.
His face. I could not.
They really emphasize a lot that she's an author in this episode.
Yes. Like, they're like, hey, remember, hey, books.
Exactly.
But, yeah. But here's the thing, is after that, when they're walking to the car, I really like their coats, first of all. I was like, wow, I like those coats. I want those coats. Can I have those coats?
Call the wardrobe department. Give them your compliments.
Be like, hey, can I have that coat? I'd like that.
That's a nice coat.
That's a nice
I like
coat.
That coat.
But okay, so you know how Bones is talking about her car. She got it from her publisher.
Yes.
And I was just like, wow, all fancy and inconvenient way to open the trunk.
Right.
I'm like, how are you going to put anything into that? Like, that just seems so inconvenient, the way it's opening. Like, does it open further?
I gotta be honest with you, I'm not a car person. I have no idea what kind of car that is.
Neither do I.
I don't know why she has to park it at an angle.
That had me dying. But in my mind, I'm like, I feel like it takes a special talent to park as crooked as she did without hitting anyone. So I was like, what?
Clearly she did it on purpose.
Right, because she was told to. But I'm like, what is this? What are this? Why? What is this car?
Right. Something that I noticed, so Booth's telling Bones why he's at the lecture hall is basically they need to go to the mall.
Yeah.
Because they found a body. And she's like, well, why am I here? And he pulls out this missing persons flyer for the victim of this episode, Charlie. And when you zoom in on it, it says that Charlie went missing October 16th, 2005.
Interesting.
And the episode aired November 1st, 2005. So this is the indication, to me at least, that they're showing the show is happening in real time with current events.
That's kind of cool. Oh, wow. I didn't even look in. But wait, he told them the remains were at the mall?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, Booth, when they were standing by the car, he told her that they needed to go to the mall because there was body there.
At the mall? Not in the field?
Behind the mall.
Oh,
behind the mall. Behind the mall.
Oh, okay. I was confused. Wait, what?
No. You just walk into Hot Topic. There's a body over there underneath.
I was like, wait a minute. They didn't discover that they went to the mall. So I'm like, did you just catch that? That they made an error in an episode that they said mall way before they discovered they went to the mall? What?
No, it was in a field behind the mall. They knew that from the beginning.
Okay, that makes sense. I was like, what?
Which leads us into the crime scene. So basically, they get to the crime scene, and how they know there's a body behind them all is a bunch of kids were getting into shenanigans and called 911 crying, saying that there was a body there.
Yeah. And, Bones talking about how, they listen to inappropriate music.
Right, and I was like, what's culturally inappropriate music? Like, I would love what to know. Genre of music is that?
Trip hop? Trip hop?
Trip hop. Is culturally inappropriate.
Yes.
My only thought for this scene, so you know how Zach puts on the thermal suit?
Yes.
And he says it reminds him of, I can't remember.
Wars?
No, Zach... It reminded him of, I can't remember, it was the Flintstones or something. But anyways, Booth says it reminds him basically of Star Wars.
Yeah.
But to me, it reminded me of Back to the Future.
Really?
In the scene where Marty McFly's already in the past and he visits his dad in the middle of the night. And he puts the Van Halen music blasting in his ears.
Yeah.
That's the scene that it reminded me of.
Really?
Not necessarily Star Wars. I'm like, boy does not look like Darth Vader.
See, in my mind, I was thinking Monsters, Inc.
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the suits. I thought of that, and then, obviously, this game never came out till recently, but I thought of Among Us.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, oh... Yeah, that works too.
There's an imposter among us.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see. Okay.
Yep. So Zach finds the body, and can you just imagine being on like the special effects department where you're like trying to make this stuff look like human remains?
Right.
Like that's got to be so much fun.
That's really interesting.
Because
like they're just putting a bunch of stuff all over it, making it look as interesting.
Yeah, because they really zoom in on the fact that he's,
deteriorating right before your eye.
Like, it's obviously messed up because it's this body of this really, really small little boy.
But still, the detail they be putting into that.
Mad props. Props.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yep. So they get to...
the lab.
They get to the lab. And they determine that the body is, in fact, Charlie. And they figure out that he may have been sexually assaulted because his clothes and shoes were found, like, perfectly intact, but away from his body.
Yeah.
And they figure out that he's been dead, like, 48 hours, basically.
Between 36 to 48 hours. I remember that.
They figure out that he's probably between 6 and 10 years old.
Yeah.
And they see, signs of trauma to his body. And everybody's kind of emotionally affected.
Oh, yeah.
By seeing just how small this victim is.
You could see, like, they're all really they're having a really hard time. Like, Angela, obviously, it's written all over her face, her tone, her actions, everything. Even Zach, he has a tone. Even, especially the way he said there's a blunt trauma to the chest. And then Hodgins, oh my gosh, he just looks so distraught. Like, when he confirmed the time of death, that's where you really could see it. Like, wow. Yeah. It was really sad. It was pretty heavy. You could see it seems like Bones was the one who was really trying to keep it most together out of all of them. Like, keeping the ball rolling.
At this point in the show, they've probably only worked on a couple of cases. And from working at a museum, they're not used to they haven't seen anything like this.
Yeah.
So it's particularly traumatizing.
Yeah,
because of the innocence and the fact that not only is this young boy, this little boy dead, but he was also presumably sexually assaulted and murdered.
Which is really sad. But yeah, that was something I had to remind myself is, you remember, they were consultants in the very beginning. Like, so this is really fresh. So they're just like, whoa, hold up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, I mean, you kind of answered my question because I was like, wait, you talked about how they had the missing child sign, of Charlie. And I was just like, hold up. Angela made a face for, like, the drawing of the victim. And I'm like, they only had that one to compare it to. I was just like, you would think maybe there'd be others to compare it to. Like, it's so, I don't know.
Suspend your disbelief.
You know what? Movie magic. Here we go again.
Yeah. I do think they could have used different pictures, but I think the main thing is they didn't have an actual actor to play Charlie.
Yeah.
Probably the only thing they paid for was to use that kid's headshot.
Probably.
Because they don't have any videos or flashbacks of anything of Charlie.
Because I was just like, wait, you just gonna compare it to this one and be like, yep, that's the one.
They're like, we're really trying to spread our budget thin these first few episodes, so if we don't actually have to hire a victim,
right,
we're just straight up just a picture.
They're also trying to keep the ball rolling. It's kind of moving pretty quickly, if you notice. Like, they're trying to get more into other details, so it's kind of moving at a steady pace. You're like, all right, keeping it going.
Yeah, they definitely
get the mood going.
Keep you entertained and glued to your seat on this one.
For sure.
Then, so now that they know that it's Charlie, Booth goes to visit Charlie's mother.
Yeah, he went to go inform her that it was Charlie and wanted to know more.
Yes. I had a couple of thoughts about this scene. Did you?
Oh, I did. Yes, I did.
First of all, what accent is Margaret trying to have? I can't tell. I can't tell if she wants to be fancy Boston / English /
Honestly, I just could not get over, like, this neighbor next to her being so sus.
Her neighbor is Ellie Nelson.
Okay. I didn't even pay attention to her name. She was just kind of annoying me.
I paid attention to names. So
well, that's good, because I did not. I was just annoyed with her vibes.
Yes. So Ellie Nelson is the wife and neighbor. She's the wife of Edward Nelson, who ends up being the villain.
Yeah.
And she's also the next door neighbor. So what we learn about Margaret in this scene is that Ellie Nelson's there to kind of comfort her. They're a close-knit neighborhood.
Yeah.
And Margaret...
She's also trying to be kind of the voice for her whenever Margaret can't speak. She's trying to clarify things and be like, no, you know, it's a great place.
She's trying to advocate.
Yes. Good choice of word.
Yes.
I was not going to figure it out.
Yes. So basically, Margaret is a foster parent. She lives off of a trust fund. She doesn't have a job, so the point where Booth is asking her what she does for her job, and she's like, they wouldn't let a single mother be a foster parent. That's a total lie. You can absolutely be a single mother and a foster parent and have a job. Like, that's not a law. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
But I would not mind being a foster child to her, because she's just living off of a trust fund. So, Margaret Sanders, please adopt me.
Right.
Like, the fact
she's just always home, always taking care of you. She got money somewhere coming, not working.
But also, like, it kind of says a lot about her character that she's literally living off of this trust fund. She doesn't have to work. But instead of working and doing things more selfish with her money, she's a stay-at-home mom to foster children.
Yep.
Like, what a lady.
There's, like, it's funny because you could see, like, different thoughts. You could see, like, wow, you know, that takes a lot to be stay-at-home mom. But then there's the other side where it's like, wow, she's kind of lazy because she didn't decide to get a job. And, you know, go something along those lines so you could make extra money or whatever. But it looks more like they're trying to portray, hey, your trust fund is very big.
Yes, and clearly she doesn't need the money, because a lot of the times the thing that sucks when it comes to foster parents is when you're a foster parent, you get a check from the state, and that money goes to taking care of the child.
Right.
And so sometimes you'll have people, a lot of the times you'll have people who take advantage of that system and take that check for themselves and abuse the children who are already in, you know, dire circumstances.
That's so sad.
It's horrible.
People suck.
So they kind of paint her as like a model foster mother,
which is really nice to see. Even though, like, some of the actions she took in this episode, it's kind of like,
sus. Mad sus.
For sure. But it's like they had you in the first half where she was like, Charlie was her only blood, and he's the one who got killed. And then boom, found out she was not.
Yes.
Yo.
And when she's talking, so Margaret's husband left her supposedly before Charlie's born, which is true, because before another woman gave birth to Charlie, her and her husband got a divorce.
Yeah.
But she kind of omits the truth there. And when she says that, Ellie Nelson right next to her is like, and he doesn't even pay child support. And I'm like, look, Ellie, you have way more problems
right,
than your neighbor's
you
ex not paying child support.
Right. What got me, though, especially, is the saying. They were like, oh, people are good neighbors. And I'm like, oh, honey, some are. Don't get me wrong. But not all neighbors in general. Not all people. You don't always want to trust everyone. But here she is. She's like, people are good here. The people are good.
What this episode shows is the fallacy of stranger danger.
Oh, yes. Definitely.
I literally need a t-shirt with like a bloody knife on it that says, nothing like this ever happens here.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's like, they always, at the beginning of every true crime documentary, they're like, she was the most sweet person. Everyone loved her. Not an enemy in sight. This was the quietest town. You couldn't even hear footsteps. It was a small
town. There was nothing bad ever happened
here. People only
here.
Laughed and drank tea.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where people die.
This day. Dun, dun, dun. Like, no, come on now, guys.
Yes.
Be smart. Be smart.
Yes.
It could happen anywhere at any time. It happens. It's real life.
And in the middle of them talking, the foster children come home and Skylar Nelson. So the foster children are Shawn and David Cook and Skylar Nelson, Ellie and Edward Nelson's son, are come home to Margaret's house.
Because they said the dad, the neighbor.
Edward Nelson.
Yes, he was like, hey.
We gotta go on a job.
Yep.
He's like pest control or something.
Yes. And, yo, little Paul Butcher. Little Dustin from Zoe 101. And he's incredibly hot now. Okay. Like, who even are you? What are in that water? Like, Nani? Who said you could be... You glue up... I have no words. I have all the words and no words.
So,
hello?
Let me translate. So, Shawn Cook is the youngest foster boy. And his character is played by Paul Butcher.
Yep.
Paul Butcher is now 26 years old, but how me and Panda remember him was as the little brother Dustin Brooks on Zoe 101, which is a Nickelodeon TV show in the early 2000s.
Yep.
Also has Jamie Lynn Spears, Britney Spears' little sister.
Britney Spears' little sister, yep.
Yes. And so now Paul Butcher is a smoke show, and he's on TikTok.
The glow up is real.
And it makes me feel very strange, because when I watched the show, I was only a few years younger than him.
So we were like, oh,
so he should have
he's
been
just a baby. And he stays a baby in our minds.
We were like, he's a baby, but in reality, we were younger than him.
Yeah.
And now we're like, uncomfortable because I'm like, oh, it feels illegal to be looking at him this way, but I'm like, no, it's safe.
Yes.
It's totally safe.
There's also that syndrome also on TikTok when they talk about Prince Zuko on Avatar, Last Airbender, obviously, because there's a part where, because I believe he's like supposed to be 16 around that time.
Oh no.
So it's like when you're young and you're watching it, you're like, oh, he's older, how cute. And then when you turn like around 16, you're like, oh, be the same age. Then you get past that and you're like, ooh, Crater Robin.
I kind of had that moment, but with Arthur, but not in like sexual tension kind of way.
Arthur.
Like the TV show, the cartoon. I remember watching it and being younger than him and being like, man, I can't wait till I'm in the second, or is it the third grade? I think he's in the second or third grade, and I was so pumped. And then I got to the second or third grade, and then I passed, and I was like, geez, when is Arthur gonna frickin' graduate to the next grade?
I feel like this is a common thing, too. Like, even with stars that we would see that are younger, like, you know, the child actors, and we would watch them growing up, and we'd be like, oh, yeah, they're going to stay a kid forever. And then we see them now, we're like, yo, like Madison Pettis.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, hello?
I think the thing is, whatever you had your first and biggest impression of that person or character or celebrity,
like that forever,
they stay like that in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, Harrison Ford, like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, like, that's how he
like
exists
that.
in my brain.
I don't blame you.
He doesn't age.
If you guys haven't gotten the hint, Pig is very much all for Harrison Ford.
Oh, no, I hate that guy. I can't stand him.
She can't. What do you mean? She can't stand him. What you mean?
Yeah, which is why I'm going to marry him, to prove everyone that, I'm a stronger, bigger person. I'll take one for the team.
Oh, okay. Oh. Back to Bones.
Back to Bones.
So, but I love Booth, though. Mm-hmm. Okay, I love Booth. But what was interesting to me, when, they said the game was broken, he said he was going to go fix it.
Oh, no, hold on. I had a thought before that.
Oh, you had a thought? All right, go ahead.
This part was so cringe to me when Skylar so Skylar and them, they come back. And
this is the neighbor's son.
Booth is in the middle of talking to Ellie Nelson and Margaret Sanders. And Skylar's like, are you guys going to figure it out? And Booth is like, I'm in the FBI. We always figure it out.
Are you sure it was Skylar? I could have sworn it was David who said that.
Oh, yes, it was David who said that.
It was
David
the older foster son from Margaret's side.
But when Booth said that, I was like, ugh, that was so cringy. But if you look at Skylar's reaction, they're so subtle with showing that this kid is troubled. He, rolls his eyes. Mm-hmm. Because clearly this kid is suffering, and nobody sees it, and nobody cares.
Yep. And it's really... yeah.
But
I love Booth here, but I found it interesting because it's just like when Booth offered to fix their game, I was like, yo, you're really going to let this FBI agent march around and help your kids? Like, is this real life?
Remember, it's a safe neighborhood.
Shut up.
It's a safe neighborhood, okay?
People are good.
People are good there.
People are good there. But I mean, he is good. But still, that's not my point, guys. Don't trust everyone. Like, come on now.
Yeah, they kind of flip-flop with that scene with going back to the lab, so we kind of include that all together.
Yeah.
So after whilst they're interviewing the Sanders family, they go back to the lab
again,
and Dr. Goodman basically summons the Squints to attend a banquet for the Jeffersonian donors, and everyone doesn't want to go.
Nope.
But they're being forced by Dr. Goodman to attend, but Hodgins is defiant. He's like, nope, not going.
Nope.
Nope.
But don't you just love their responses? Like, you have Angela going, I got a date. He goes, you don't even know when it is. Or Zach, who has the best one. He's like, so what kind of food will be there? Like,
it's honestly the most important question as to whether I would attend an event.
I mean, I may not always want to go, but boy, if you got some food for me ready to go, I'd be willing to come through. Don't get me wrong. I would come. You got some good food. Chef's kiss, I'll come.
And the underlining point of this episode as well is we already know that Bones is rich, but we figure out that Hodgins is like rich.
Yeah, he got money.
And that's why he doesn't want to show up.
Nope.
But nobody else knows that.
They won't find out till later. But
also, it doesn't seem like Dr. Goodman knows either.
Nope. You would think he would know considering he's the boss and you have to look at people's files. Or maybe people could put that 2 and 2 together. They literally just talk about, the Cavaliers.
The
Cantilevers. Not Cavaliers. Cantilevers group. But yeah, you get my point though, where I'm just like, you would think Dr. Goodman would know. He is the boss, man.
Right. And we're also introduced to Hodgins' anger management issues as he wears a rubber band around his wrist and snaps himself when he feels anger.
And it's funny because Angela catches that and she addresses him later. But with Dr. Goodman, it's a shame that he doesn't stay. Like, I love Camp. I love her to pieces. Don't get me wrong. She's a character later that you guys see. Those of you who have not watched Bones yet. But I love Dr. Goodman. I think he's a great boss. And he really does bring in that authority figure, considering it's a museum.
Yes.
But then when he goes, it's like, okay, it's not really a museum anymore. It's a lab.
It feels more like a crime lab.
Yes. And it's like, oh, they're still the Jeffersonian, but now they're a crime lab. No more museum as much. Only sometimes we dabble with the museum.
I will die on this hill that Cam should have been an addition and not a replacement.
Yes. She should have been added. I feel like it would have been good. But, maybe Dr. Goodman's actor didn't want to stay. And that's
I don't know.
That's okay, I guess.
But I will die for that man. Actor so and majestic. Character.
He's so majestic.
He's a beautiful man.
But yeah, so then we talk about how, Bones has to help Zach.
Yeah, Zach's warming up the boiler to clean the bones. Mm-hmm. And they kind of talk about decompartmentalizing their work because Bones can see that Zach is really affected by this particular case.
Because he's so small and little and just, he was young.
But here's the bone that I have to pick with this scene.
Did you say the bone?
I did. I do it again.
Oh my gosh. Why are you like this?
So Zach's warming up the boiler to clean the bones. Bones sees that he's clearly upset.
Yes.
And she asks him if something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Zach tells her that these are the smallest remains that he's ever worked on. Mm-hmm. And she's like, that's a good observation, but it's not pertinent to the investigation. And Zach apologizes like, I'm sorry. I have emotions. Like, dude, you asked him if something is wrong. I'm sorry that my emotions that you asked about aren't pertinent to the investigation.
It's like, excuse me, my bad.
Like, you're the one who... okay. Bones does this sometimes, where you can tell they want to be purposeful with the scene and convey a message.
Yes.
So they will have one character initiate a conversation with the other about the topic.
Yeah.
But then, at some point, one of the characters is like, all right, well, let's get back to the case, or I don't want to talk about this anymore. But they're the ones who initiated it.
Right. And that kind of happened here, but, I'm still okay with the rest of it. Like, if you take that part out, I'm actually okay with, like, how she approached it. Because when it comes to her and Zach, people don't understand them in the way they talk. And I just feel like she's a really good mentor to Zach in general.
Yes.
Because it's like, you see how she really tries to talk to him and give him tips, like, putting your heart in a box, or focus on the details, or don't refer to the victim by name, if the case is too heavy to handle. And I thought those were really some good pointers for him.
They're good pointers. And revealing as to how she deals with her emotions.
Yes.
And why she is the way she is.
And why she's good at what she does. Because it's not an easy job.
She tries to connect with him by mentioning that she was at the Waco siege and identified bodies of young children.
Yeah.
This show is notorious for continuity issues. And in later episodes, they say that she was born in 1976. The Waco siege happened in 1993. So she would have been 17 at the time. So probably not. Do you know what the Waco siege is?
Nope.
Okay. So luckily for you, I stole a blurb from Wikipedia. Okay.
Okay.
So this is big stuff. This is cult stuff.
Cult stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't know what the Waco siege is, I'm just going to give you the brief rundown. And if you want to look into it later, or maybe we cover it in another episode.
What were the years again? Like, it happened what year?
1993.
And she was how old? Like, what year was she born?
Supposedly, she was born in 1976.
Interesting.
Supposedly.
So I mean, maybe she started when she was young. You never know. Maybe she graduated early.
But, like, with your PhD?
She could have been an intern.
But also, don't we remember that she was in foster care until she was 16 or something?
That's what I mean. It's like maybe she interned at 17.
Well, you wouldn't be an intern at the Waco siege.
True.
I'm telling you. This was big stuff. You would have not been an intern, and...
Well, tell me about the Waco thing so that way I can understand what in the world this means.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay.
No, you're good.
So
I was trying to think the numbers.
It's also known as the excuse me.
Words.
It's also known as the Waco Massacre. So it has to do with the branch. Oh my gosh.
Are you dying?
I need to drink some water. Hold on.
Drink the agua. Absorb the fluids. I don't...
God. Okay, I'm okay now.
Okay.
Alrighty. So, the Branch Davidians were a religious doomsday cult. They were an offshoot of a Seventh-day Adventist offshoot.
I feel like I may
of
know
Christianity.
what this is, actually. Keep going. I might know what you're talking about.
Okay, so it was led by David Koresh.
Okay.
At Mount Carmel Center Ranch
Carmel
in the
Center.
community of Axel, Texas. So on February 28th, I think my dates may be weird here. But anyways, 1993, the government led a siege. Oh, yes, I'm correct. So between February 28th and April 19th, 1993, so 51 days, the government led a siege on the compound, which it was suspected that they were stockpiling illegal weapons.
51 days? Mm-hmm. March 28th to April?
Don't start talking about numbers. You're going to get us off track.
Okay, go on.
So
it didn't seem right. Okay, whatever. Go on.
Mm-hmm. So, blame Wikipedia. Anyways, it's 1993, okay?
Okay, whatever.
And they think that the Branch Davidians are stockpiling illegal weapons. So the ATF tries to serve a search warrant. Gunfire breaks out. People die. 4 government agents, 6 Branch Davidians, and basically the standoff lasts 51 days until the FBI launches an assault with tear gas.
Yo.
Ultimately, the Mount Carmel Center catches on fire.
The Carmel caught on fire.
The fire results in the deaths of 76 Branch Davidians, including 25 children, 2 pregnant women, and David Koresh himself.
Wow, that's sad.
The Branch Davidians, it's a lot of stuff to look into, but basically they're a doomsday cult, which means they're preparing for the end of the world, the apocalypse. So that breeds for a very toxic community.
That's so sad, though. Still, they died.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Sad. Dang.
Big stuff.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense for it'd be very strange for 70-year-old Bones to be at this. Okay. I mean, all right.
But in the suspension of disbelief in this bubble where she's trying to connect with Zach in a world where she was at the Waco siege and would have had to deal with that would be immense carnage to have witnessed.
Yikes.
And would explain a lot about how she deals with what she sees.
Well, I mean, the tip that she gave to him where she was like, did you smell Charlie's mouth? Mm-hmm. Well, she didn't say Charlie, obviously.
She said the
victim's mouth. And I was just like, that's strange to do. But I get what she was trying to do. And I guess kind of based on your story, I guess that's kind of where she got that from, I'm assuming.
Potentially.
It's possible. You did talk about, was it tear gas?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but you know what? I'm not going to knock that theory.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting my theory.
I'm here to support you.
Oh, okay. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you too.
So then we move on.
So we flip-flap. Flip. Oh my god.
I'm gonna flip-flap, y'all.
We flip-flop back to the Sanders home, okay? Are you gonna be okay?
No, because I'm thinking of the shoes, like flip-flop.
You're gonna put me in a home. Oh,
okay, go on.
Get serious.
I'm not good at that.
Okay, so back at the Sanders home.
Okay.
Booth found out, back when they were playing video games, that David's got a girlfriend.
Yes.
And he uses that information to basically find out that the boys
went to the mall on the day they were supposed to be at the park.
Yep. And that Shawn took Charlie to the mall to meet up with David on the day he went missing.
Yeah, that sucks.
So now they determine that Charlie went missing around the mall, which makes sense.
And it made sense because they talked about it. But in the scene before that, because they kind of went back and forth,
Yes.
Flip-flap, flip-flop. So if you notice, Booth is acting like such a dad. Like, he's just hanging out. He's asking about girlfriends and calling them puny mortals to challenge him in video games after, he fixed the controller. It's so simple to fix.
Even though he's playing a video game that's not compatible with the controller, but that's here nor there.
But I was just like, wow, interesting tactic. He got David to talk later about how they went missing. So I was just like, wow, interesting. Is that a common thing? Do you believe that's a common thing that, law enforcement does?
Do you mean by playing video games?
No, playing video games. Kind of being buddy-buddy with,
yes,
when it comes to
absolutely.
younger kids, especially, kids specifically,
So, when you're... It's tough because there's a lot of different views and interpretations of law enforcement depending on people's interactions. Mm-hmm. In cases like this or investigations, a lot of the time you're going to go with you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
What the hell does that mean?
It means that you're going to get more information if you're not a dick.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense to me.
So, if you're dealing with kids, right? And think of yourself when you were this age. If someone came up to you and was like...
interrogating me, I would not want to talk to you.
And these are also foster kids, okay? So, they don't give background to what they've been through.
No.
But being a foster kid, you go through a lot, and you have a lot of trust issues.
Yeah.
So, Booth is being more hands-off and neutral to try to show him that he's not a threat.
That makes sense. So that's it. Okay, cool. Just wanted to confirm that because I'm like, I wonder if that was a tactic. So.
It was definitely a tactic.
What was getting me though too is when he was the name's David. I'm like, huh, David Boreanaz is right next to you, but your character's name is David.
David.
You're David.
Name
I'm
is
David. You're David. I'm David.
This is Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
So then we go back to the lab.
Back to the lab
again.
Okay.
So Hodgins finds out that the chemicals around Charlie's mouth were halogens. He's talking to Angela. Mm-hmm. Angela's trying to figure out why he doesn't want to go to the banquet.
Yeah, but she actually... Yeah, she does. She tries to figure it out. She just kind of messes with him. She starts pulling on his rubber band to get his attention. She's confirming his anger management. And what got me is because she basically talked about, he said he was angry or something, and she just brought up how anger is only fear turned inwards. Mm-hmm. And all I thought of was, Master Yoda, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. And I was telling Pig earlier, I was like, I had this phrase stuck in my head earlier. And I believe that is my road rage origin. I have quite road rage. And I'm more than positive it started because I had a fear for driving. I don't mind now, but now I just get angry. So, now I suffer.
In episodes of The Maury Show, when the unfavorable guest walks out and they're yelling at the audience expletives, and you can only hear every other word because every single word is bleeped out.
Yeah.
That's the audio track to your road rage. That's what it sounds like being in the car with you when you have road rage.
Well, your favorite part is when I just go back to the conversation as if nothing happened.
Yes. It's a little, a little jarring, but I've learned to live with it.
She says it's colorful.
It is colorful. It's the frickin' rainbow.
Delicious.
So then from that scene, they go to Angela and Booth and Bones looking at security footage.
At the mall.
Mm-hmm. Angela basically proves that she's a covert squint.
She's a tech genius.
By utilizing her camera software to search the footage for different body types to see if they can find Charlie.
Yeah. I just found it interesting because Booth was like, what? He's never seen this type of technique. And I just found it funny because it's like, oh, wow, even the FBI doesn't have this technique. Granted, different time, era, I get it, early 2000s. But still, I was like, interesting. She surpassed the FBI. You know,
Right.
Again, here they're taking shots again.
My main complaint is that 16 years later, surveillance camera footage has not improved one iota. That it's still just as crummy as it was back then. Like, make it make sense. Make it make sense to me.
Make it make sense? I think not. Let's never make it make sense.
And at this point, so they're looking at it, and Angela kind of gets introspective, where she's like, that this might be the last images of Charlie alive.
Yeah.
And I feel like Angela's kind of the voice of the audience at times.
Yeah,
where
I agree.
She
brings up points that sometimes you don't really think about because you're so into the episode, and then you're like, oh my god, you're right.
Yes.
It definitely happened.
And I was like, man, this is so sad.
I mean, it's interesting because I even connected with it when I recently just watched it now because of, my favorite K-pop star, Junghyun, when he died, they had like a footage of like the last footage of him was at the gas station. And I was like, oh my god, this is probably like the last, evidence of him alive.
And
it was so sad. But something...
Rip Junghyun.
Rip Kim Jong-un.
R.I.P.
From SHINee. Forever my bias. Forever and ever. But what I was saying is that I found it interesting that you notice when Booth says to Angela, he's like, wow, she, after, she basically changed as a person after getting that job. Like, because he's like, oh, you became, because, you talked about how she was a squint, and it's funny because it's like, oh, yeah, you're one of them, aren't you? Like, you're actually one of them. You changed type of thing. And I was just like, kind of like, ouch.
I don't think, and I think that's a misconception from him, because I don't think she changed. She's obviously a complex person.
Oh, yeah,
and
very.
A lot of the times in the media, you never see the balance of an intelligent person who's also incredibly creative.
Yes.
And artistic.
For real.
Like,
yes.
A lot of the times you'll see people who are artists, and you're like, oh, they're so smart to do their art, but you never really see someone like Angela, where she has the capabilities to do such amazing art, and also be really into computers and technology. And while those people exist in real life, you rarely see them represented on TV.
Which is why I really like Angela's character. She just seems the most relatable, especially if it was something like you're in this type of field and you have that type of mindset.
And she shows you can be incredibly smart and still maintain social skills.
Exactly. But I was just like, wow, Booth. That kind of hurts. Like,
right?
You could see it really took a toll on her to where she really thought about it later. Like, her and Brenna were talking. Bad Booth. Why would you do that? But, it kind of also pointed out, like, even Booth talks about later, because I agreed. I was very surprised. Like, she's been at the job as long as she has, and she even brings up, this is the longest job she's had, and it's because of Bones.
Their friendship.
Their friendship, and she just did not know if she could handle it anymore.
Yeah, she starts to feel like she doesn't belong.
Yeah.
And when she says, like, she's trying... This is the part where you can tell she's kind of straddling in between these different worlds of, like, well, no, I'm the good time girl.
Yeah. I used to do this and do all this fun stuff, and here I am. I couldn't get over this serious moment. Like, I knew it was supposed to be serious, but here she goes, I used to draw naked guys, and now I draw dead guys. And I'm like, they could have been naked too.
They're still naked. But I love the part when she's like, I'm a good time girl, and Bones is like, ooh, woo, but we have good times. We do.
Ooh, woo, hearts.
Ooh, woo. But this episode shows how the job can affect people. Like, the suicide rates among people who work in the criminal justice system is really unfortunate.
No, I did not know that.
Yes. I mean, think about all this different stuff that they're seeing.
Yeah.
The things that they're exposed to. Yeah. And in that world...
I mean, I have definitely talked about it before, just in general, when common conversations. I never believe people, especially young people, should really be in this type of job field. It's just, it's a lot to handle, and it takes a toll on your mental health. So in a way, it does not surprise me, but it's really unfortunate because they're really exposed to the evils that the world presents.
And you can see the thought process of how you're supposed to deal with it is what Bones says. Put your heart in a box. Mm-hmm. But as humans, you shouldn't put your heart in a box.
Yeah.
It's not healthy.
No. And you can't do it all the time, 24/7, especially if that's your job field, you know?
Nope. And it affects you. And as you see it, we see it affect Bones later on in life, too.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
It is. Stuff. But, it was even had to be, what was also heavy is the story that the mom, Margaret, told after we found out, like, Charlie was actually adopted.
Yes. So how we figured that out in a brief interim is that Bones, Booth, and Zach, they're looking at the bones. Turns out Charlie has scoliosis and some sort of rare genetic disease that's passed down from mother to son. Mm-hmm. Bones sees it's not apparent that Margaret has the same disease, so she must not be his mother. Mm-hmm. So they pull her in to the FBI and they speak with her and get the details of how she came to be the guardian of Charlie.
Yeah. And even that story is still sad.
I know. It's so rough.
Like, here the kid already has problems, has scoliosis, and he has literally brittle bones from his condition, and then his childhood upbringing.
Yes. Like, basically...
His mother was like a drug abuser, I believe. Mm-hmm. She was a drug addict. Yeah. And I don't remember... It was like this whole story about it.
So basically what happens is that Margaret is a foster parent to Charlie when he's just 10 days old. Mm-hmm. He gets reunited with his biological mother as through the normal procedure of the courts.
Yep.
And Margaret remains in contact. She sends money. She buys gifts.
She sends like formula because he is a baby.
She's trying to be supportive because of how much she cares. And she goes to visit one day, I think it was like Christmas Day, and something finds like Charlie's mother dead on the floor.
With a needle in her arm.
And Charlie's crying. So she picks him up and in this tender moment, promises never to leave him or abandon him because now that Charlie's mother is dead, he'd go back into the system. So she takes him as her own.
And pretty much was like, I'm going to keep you safe, I'm going to protect you, and that's why she is really beating herself up. She's like, I was supposed to keep him safe. I was going to keep him safe. He was going to be okay. And she feels like, it's such a failure. And this episode, I'm telling y'all, it really hit us in the feels.
I know. And even though, like, clearly her heart was in the right place, wanting to care for Charlie and provide him a good life, it's scary how you can kidnap a child and convince the world that child is your own.
It's so simple. And so simply done.
And no one was looking for him. No one found out. Like, it's all around horrifying.
Yep. Like, I mean, she even said she was waiting for them to discover her. And as much as they were like, oh, you still did a good thing because you're a good parent. But at the same time, not all people are good parents. Mm-hmm. And that's really scary. Someone could just up and grab your kid, bye. Mm-hmm. Straight out of your home, murder you, take your kids, bye. Like,
it's scary.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
and my other thought at this point, which is less, a little bit more, less emotional.
Yeah.
Which is that they arrested Margaret for kidnapping.
Yeah. And of course, Bones gets emotional because she's just like, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that?
So from a law enforcement perspective, they probably wouldn't have arrested her right then because Charlie's been murdered, clearly.
Yeah.
And they haven't solved that murder. They haven't connected her to his murder. Mm-hmm. So if she kidnapped him and Booth kind of expresses that she may have killed him, they wouldn't have arrested her at this point. They would have waited for more evidence so that they could arrest her on both charges potentially.
But what if, like, for this instance, she wasn't the one? Would she still have gotten arrested?
It's not likely, because Charlie's passed, and it doesn't seem as though Charlie has any extended family. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could. It all depends on what the prosecutor is willing to charge. So what people don't understand sometimes is that the police will find someone's committed a crime. They'll see all of the elements of that crime, and they'll arrest them. And from that point, it's the prosecutor's decision on whether to charge them with those crimes and move forward with those charges.
Interesting.
So if a prosecutor looks at this case, the police is like, okay, we've wrapped it up. Here's all the evidence. We believe he's committed these elements of the crime. Prosecutor takes a look at this and is like, I'm not going to take this to trial. I'm not going to touch this, and drop the charges. So if a prosecutor believed that they could charge her with this and had enough evidence to do so, I could see that they would.
Interesting.
But I could also see a scenario where they wouldn't.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's just like, wow. I've definitely movie magic them. They just wanted to, like, be like, hey, let's piss off Bones and really see a reaction out of her to see.
They were definitely doing it for that.
Yeah, because you obviously see later that Booth compensates and is like, look, I put them in a decent home right now for now while this goes on. But it's nice because they lighten the mood, and we get to find out Hodgins is rich. He got the money. So this is when we find that part out.
Yeah, basically, Hodgins and Angela are looking through her software program. Booth
Zach
comes
and
up.
Hodgins. I mean, Zach and Angela are looking,
Yes.
not Hodgins and Angela.
Thank you. Zach and Angela discuss Hodgins in this scene.
Yes.
And Zach lives above Hodgins' garage.
And she just asks for details. She's just like, so, you know, what's it like? Blah, blah, blah. And he's just casually talking about how rich he is, basically. Like, oh, you know, I never really gone to the main house, you know, past the tennis court, past the pond, past the whatever. I can't.
We must protect Zach at all costs.
We really must. And then they talk about how many cars. He's like, like 12, including the antique ones or something. I'm like, yo.
Yeah, we learned that he's the sole heir to the Cantilever Group.
Not Cavaliers.
The very big money.
Yes.
And,
they were like, oh, he's the Hodgins of the Cantilever Group. And it's funny because it's Booth is the one who points that out. And that's when Angela puts it all together. And she's like, wait a minute. They're the single biggest donor to the Jeffersonian. Whoa.
Which means that if Hodgins went to the banquet, all the rich people there would want to fawn over him.
Yes.
And he's like, nah, can't have that.
And you could tell, like,
No.
But,
so
yeah,
from
Booth
there
is, like, pointing that out. He's like, yeah, he's your boss. Hodgins
yeah.
is all of your boss.
Booth he's something else, isn't he?
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss. So then we go to Bones' office where she's talking to Hodgins, and basically he susses out that she's writing a new book. Because
I love how he can identify her face just based on her thinking face. He's just like, you're writing a new book.
And because she feels guilty because they bought her a new fancy car.
Yep.
What was that line that he says?
He basically says something about, was it coercion, something?
Yeah.
So that way they can just come together and basically just take a stand against them.
Yeah. And
something along those lines.
Yeah, where he's
so
like,
funny.
he's like, you don't write your book and I won't go to the banquet.
Yes.
We'll be in solidarity.
That's what, yep, exactly. And it was so funny. And then even Booth comes in and he's being nosy about the notes for the book. He's just like looking around like, huh, is my name in here?
Yes, and he grabs Bones to go. What are they going to go look at?
I guess they went to go examine the remains again. Or, no. They went out, and then he interrogates Shawn, I think.
Yes, that's right.
They went to the interrogation room, I believe.
Yes, so they go to the interrogation room. Booth is trying to connect with Shawn to try to find out more information. He kind of reveals a little bit about himself, showing a scar that he got with his younger brother, Jared, who he becomes a reoccurring character later on in the show, Booth's brother. And then, Charlie shows he's got some scars. Shawn shows that he has some scars of his own from cigarette burns from his father. Yeah. But he's still not budging and giving more information. The
damn prosecutor.
Behind the glass, Bones is with the juvenile prosecutor, and Booth is interviewing Shawn with the child advocate. And you can tell that the prosecutor is frustrated because she feels that Booth isn't being aggressive enough. And Bones takes offense, feeling as though they're violating Shawn's rights, or they're not really looking into his interests. And what this part kind of reminds me of is that Bones cares about the truth.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes me think of the last episode, A Boy in a Tree, where everybody is trying to force Bones to make a decision.
Last
is it
episode
suicide?
Wasn't The Boy in the Tree. Last episode was The Man and the Bear, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. The episode before that. So episode 3?
Yeah.
3, A Boy in a Tree, where everyone's trying to pull Bones in different directions. They're like, Bones, you need to say this is a suicide. Bones, you need to say this is a murder. And Bones is like, I care about the truth, because that's respectful to the victim. And that's what I see here, too, is that the prosecutor is like, what side are you on? And Bones is like, I'm on the side of the truth.
But you could also see, like, you know, she's very much, not only for the truth, but she feels personally offended for the kid because he is literally a part of the foster care system, and so was she, which obviously we find out later, but you could see, like, you know, she takes full offense to that, like, as if, like, they all feel the same thing. So she's just like, what the hell? You guys need to advocate for this child. Like, you can't expect Booth to just keep forcing answers out of him. He's still a kid. He's been through enough, you know?
Correct.
Like, you guys treat them like garbage.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
But it's funny because, like, the way how they introduce, like, the way how Booth makes it known to Shawn, like, hey, we know you took Charlie to the mall. He was like, here comes movie magic again. They took a picture from earlier. It's supposed to be a reflection through a glass door at the mall, and you see Shawn's face, and I'm like, that movie magic, y'all made that crystal clear, but how are you gonna tell me that that is him leading Charlie out of the mall when it's just his face?
Well, the picture is them in the reflection of the exit doors at the mall.
Yeah, but he's not, like, pulling him out. He's just saying leading Charlie out of the mall.
I think they're interpreting that because Charlie, because Shawn was the one who took Charlie with him to the mall in the first place. So if Charlie's going anywhere, it's probably because he's following Shawn, because Shawn's older.
I mean, it makes sense. It's just based off of this picture that was made for movie magic. I just found it interesting. Like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I could see that. Technically, you can't prove that he's leading him
unless they showed, like, the footage. You know, they had the footage. They could have showed that, but instead they're like, look at your face. We found it in a reflection through a glass door.
Yeah, and Shawn is not impressed. He's just not paying attention.
He's drawing on the table with water, and I was like, that's like a classic kid thing. Like, I mean, I used to kind of do that, but I did that with, like, Elmer's glue. I would put, like, a little daub of it on my table, and I just let it dry on my desk or something, or inside my desk, just let it dry. Make little dots around. That was my kid thing habit I did.
Aww, so cute.
Not really, it was weird.
Nah, you cute. You cute girl. I see it.
Then we moved on.
And so
Angela confronting Hodgins.
Yeah, she basically confronts him that she knows he's wealthy, and he's increasingly getting upset.
Yeah.
Bones arrives as Angela's leaving, and she kind of incidentally reveals that Angela's having second thoughts about working at the Jeffersonian. I can't talk, you know this. And,
it's okay.
And but Hodgins you could tell he's kind of caught off guard where he's like, oh, I didn't know she's feeling this way, because this whole episode she's been reaching out to him, trying to suss out how he's feeling and what's going on with him.
But he hasn't been thinking about her.
No.
Until this moment, because, okay, so when you first see them, you know, she starts talking, I'm like, how we've known each other for a long time, you know, we've been working together, you know, do we really know each other? Like, what got me is she was like, so how come you never invited me to your house? And he gives her, like, this look. He looks up and down, he's like, I didn't pick that type of vibe up from you, like... Not yet. But I was like, wow, okay, but... He did snap at Angela.
Yes.
When she did kind of was like, oh, we know. We know that you have money.
Mm-hmm.
And he got upset. And I was like, you didn't really need to snap at her. But, I mean, it's a good thing she walked away. You know, she was being pretty nosy.
Thus the anger management bracelet.
Yeah. But, I mean, they bring it up later, though, where it really shows that he really loves his position. Just being a plain dude. Just being plain Jack Hodgins, you know, just working there.
This scene kind of leads in that because Booth comes to grab Brennan to Bones to go back and look at the stuff.
Yep.
And
that's when they learn about, like, how there's another way for Charlie's bones to break.
Oh, yes. So they figure out there's another way for Charlie's bones to break from compression instead of blunt force trauma.
Because he has brittle bones. So they thought it'd be so easy for him to break his bones in 2 ways. But they realized, compression.
Yep. And as they're leading out of the bone room to go to the Angelinator, Hodgins stops Booth and Angela to confront them and is like, look, I know you guys know, but you can't tell anybody. I just want to be Jack Hodgins who works at the lab.
Like, let me be me. Let me enjoy my time here. Let me just be myself here and be who I am here. You could tell he doesn't want to have that responsibility, you know, of single-handedly holding this much money over people, being the boss man he is. But he's like, no, I want to be a plain dude. I just want to be Jack Hodgins. Let me chill with my bugs.
This is why I love Hodgins. He's like the humble rich man. Like, I think that we root for him because, like, there are rich people who are, like, rich, but then there are rich people who happen to be rich.
Yes.
And there are a few times in the show where Hodgins, like, he uses his wealth, but it's never necessarily for his personal benefit. It's always for the joy of others. Yes. Like, we see he's just this generous person who happens to be rich.
He
and
just
has his problems.
But he's a normal dude, and he just happens to be rich.
Yes. And
No, I just wanted to bring up back to before the compression of, like, saw the breaking of the pencil. Something I wanted to talk about was Booth. When he walks in, you know, you could tell because he was like, oh, look, I put the kids in a foster home, like a safe space or whatever, for them to be taken care of for now, like temporary care. Mm-hmm. And you could just see that he even talked to Bones, like, you could tell he's triggered about how she feels and acts, and he's literally her work husband because he genuinely cares about how she feels because it affects their dynamic duo vibes.
Yes.
Like, he's just like, I care about what you think, basically. And if you don't like what I do, you know, you need to talk to me or you can't act this way. It's going to be hard for us to work together, basically.
Yeah, you can tell they both really care about what each other thinks, but in very indirect ways.
Yes. Like, they value each other's input, and it's very sweet.
And when she says that, like, if I can't respect the law, at least I can respect you. Yes. You can see he takes that to heart.
Like at that point, he didn't really care about anything else. He was just like, oh, you'll respect at least me? Mm-hmm. Little old me?
Little old me?
Like, his heart, you see his face just kind of light up like, oh, okay, I can take that. I accept that.
Yes, I agree with you.
But so that after Hodgins talks to them after they leave the bone room.
Oh, one other thought that I think is weird.
What else
about Hodgins is, like, you know how he's supposed to be this, like, kooky conspiracy theorist, and, like, nobody believes him. They're like, oh, that's just Jack Hodgins. But, like, he's one of the richest people in the world, so don't you think he would know the truth about, like, these secret societies and different stuff like that?
I feel like he would, but at the same time, I feel like it's the whole everything keeps counters and he doesn't have complete access.
Right.
Like, he's rich, but is he richer than Bill Gates?
I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know. True.
You know what I mean? So,
True.
I don't know. But leading them to the Angelator, I found it interesting that Angela apologized when she saw the simulation for the chest being cracked. And I was like, I don't think you needed to apologize. I think it's okay to be human.
Even Bones looks like she's about to cry.
Yeah, and Booth was just like, damn, like, seriously?
Yes.
Like, it affected all of them. Like, they're just like, wow, this is how this kid died. He got crushed, literally.
Yeah. heartbreaking.
But at least what kind of lightened it up a little bit was like Booth, because Angela talks about the weight of the man in kilograms.
Yes, I noticed this part too.
Booth is like, so what's that in American?
Same.
Like, I'm like, same, Booth, same. Because in America, it's pounds, not kilograms.
Yeah, we use the imperial system.
Yes.
Instead of the metric system.
I believe
which is, like,
so.
I understand that the metric system, like, clearly makes more sense on paper.
But that's not
the imperial
how it
system, it just makes sense to me. I'm like, okay, I hear that. Like, trying to tell somebody their height in meters or centimeters, it just sounds so obnoxious.
Instead of saying you're this many feet and this many inches, instead
like, for
of
some
saying,
reason, 6 feet feels homey, 5 feet feels homey, but they're 1.5 meters tall. I'm like, is there like a little leprechaun or something?
like, I have to use my brain.
Yeah, I don't like to do that.
I feel like you have to be raised with it to understand how it goes.
Yeah, let's redo.
Let's go back in time. So then we move on, because they realize, like, after they realize it was an adult who crushed Charlie's chest, they realize the only one they could really get the information from is Shawn. Mm-hmm. So Bones is, like, insisting to Booth, like, hey, I want to talk to Shawn. And Booth is like, yo, no. Like, you are not a people person. This is not your strong suit. And children,
Right.
But
she's like, when's the last time you talked to a child?
Right. But she's just like, trust me. Let me do it, basically.
Right.
And, I mean, he does it. Again, he values what she says. And if she wants to go with it, he does. And she pulls through.
Yep.
So they end up in the interrogation room.
Yep.
I believe,
and she connects with Shawn.
Yes.
Kind of indirectly alluding to the fact that she was in the system as well. Mm-hmm. And they connect over that. And Shawn reveals to her who the killer was, because Bones promises that her friend at the FBI is going to make sure that Shawn and David can stay with Margaret.
Yes. And, of course, I get this scene is emotional. I got emotional. I even had a victory when I was getting all emotional. Yes. I'm all sad. I was like, hallelujah. I'm crying while celebrating. But, of course, the thought still came across. I was like, Paul Butcher went from this cute-ass little boy to being a fine-ass man. Mm-hmm. Okay.
We appreciate you, Mr. Butcher.
We do. You didn't have to do us all like that. You didn't have to glow up like that.
Weren't
Who
prepared.
said you could do that? Ain't nobody said you could do it, but you did.
Where was the permission?
It was not.
Defiantly glowed up.
Facts. We're just like, yo, who even are you?
I know. I can't get
I need that water, yo. Where's this water?
I'm sorry, you're really thirsty over there. You're looking parched.
It's okay. It seems like we all are. Look at that TikTok, dude. Everyone be thirsting. So then we move on, because we found out, Edward Nelson.
Hold on. I did have a
You had a thought? What was your thought?
So, the child advocate says that Bones can't make promises like that.
Yeah.
The way she promises that the FBI will make sure Shawn and David stay with Margaret.
Can she do it then?
So, technically, during an investigation, I don't know if this extends to consultants, but in particular officers, they can lie during an interrogation to a certain extent. They can lie by saying, for example, if they're interrogating Shawn, say, look, we've got your DNA around Charlie's neck.
Oh, wow.
They can lie and they can say that. But they can't make promises of leniency or violate their rights. Like, they can't say, we're not going to give you a lawyer. They can't say, oh yeah, we're going to make sure that you just get probation. So there are certain extents. I don't know if that applies to Bones in this scenario, considering she's not a police officer.
Right.
As well as...
I mean, I don't even know if she could even talk to him in the first place to interrogate him, considering she's the consultant.
I don't know. I'm not a cop. And when I provide these points of views, I am not an expert. I am not a law enforcement officer.
She's just Wikipedia.
I'm just somebody who's interested in this, researched it, and providing a point of view. But if I say something that is incorrect or whatever, let us know.
Yeah,
we are open to it. So I'm not an expert.
We're not perfect, but we be trying to do our best to give decent content.
So I don't know if foster care would even allow them to necessarily go back to Margaret, considering the situation.
Yeah.
But technically, it could be either way. She could make those lies, she could not. I don't have a definitive answer.
Yeah.
But the thing I did want to point out was that technically officers can lie during an interrogation.
Yeah, that's still crazy.
Yep. So Shawn tells Bones that
it was Edward Nelson.
Yep, the next door neighbor.
And this creepy ass son of a bitch neighbor, dude. Like,
they roll up to the house where it looks like Edward Nelson and his son are about to go out on a job.
Yeah, they're pest control, like we said.
And they arrest him. And did you notice that Edward never has a speaking line in the entire episode?
He just stares.
And his name tag says Hank.
Yo, I didn't even notice that.
His name tag says Hank, but his name is Edward.
That's
Hank isn't even his last name.
I wonder, because I feel like I've seen this before, where I used to work at places, and people had these name tags, and they both had the same name, and I'm like, are they the same name? Like, they were maintenance people at the job, and I was like, do they have the same name, or is that the name of the company that's embroidered on the thing? Mm-hmm. So I couldn't tell. So that's kind of what made me think of. I'm like, oh no, maybe it's the company that made it. It's a Hank suit.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But you also see Booth go right into giving him his Miranda warning, which we know he would not do. Mm-mm. He would just arrest him.
Movie magic.
But the piece of crap gets arrested. And the thing that makes me sad about this scene is that you see Edward being arrested, and you see Skylar comforting his mom, Ellie. Yeah. And to me, this just shows that how he's, even though he's a probable victim of his father, like they suspect that his father abused him, his first instinct is to comfort the one who should have been protecting and comforting him, his mother. And it's so crazy to me that this can go on in someone's home and a parent doesn't know, but I know this happens a lot.
I mean, this is why, because I even told Pig, when I saw the scene, I'm like, you know what this reminds me of? Because it's the same thing, Neighbor. It reminds me of this film that Pig actually introduced me to. It's on Netflix. It's called Abducted in Plain Sight, where the man befriended this mom at church, and he's actually the neighbor, and the families grew close, and the man was preying on their daughter over a span of many years.
And messing with the parents, too. It's a Bananas documentary, Abducted in Plain Sight. It's on Netflix. It's horrifying.
Yes, you could not even believe. I was lost for words. But the whole concept of, it was the neighbor, it really reminded me of that. I was like, yeah, that's literally that's how simple it is. It could be your neighbor.
Yeah, dismantling the idea of stranger danger. I mean, obviously,
all people
strangers
are good.
Strangers can be dangerous, but oftentimes people are victimized by those that they know, close family, friends, even those that they love.
Some sort of connection. Scary. They don't always pick the most random ones. It's always someone close to you who's been watching you.
Yep.
Scary.
And so after they arrest him, you get a little montage of everybody, but you see Booth meet Bones in her office to let her know that it's a done deal. They know that it's Edward Nelson. They figured out the insecticide is the same chemical they found on Charlie's face.
Yeah. Which is...
And Bones reveals to Booth that she was in foster care.
Well, he kind of figured it out based on that, and then he tried to dig more, and she was like, I'll let you know when I'm ready, basically.
But also she's like, her grandfather got her out of foster care. I don't remember them ever mentioning her grandfather ever again.
Don't either. I think they might have changed that, to be honest.
Come on, Bones. You're better than this.
the budget, yo. Budget. But, yeah, but going back to what I said, like, literally, they really care about what each other says. Is you see when Bones tells Boo, she goes, I didn't park in an angle like you said, and now there's a ding in my door. And he just starts dying. He's like, sorry. Yeah. Not bad. But you could see, like, you know, they really care about what each other says. Like, they really listen to each other, and whatever they say, they just value it. Like, I care about what you say. You matter. I trust you, you know? Yeah.
Even though the people who gave her the car told her, hey, you need to park this car this certain way, Booth says something, and she just trusts it.
She ran with it. She's like, I trust you over the people I bought this car from.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah. But, so then now you see everyone's preparing to go to the banquet. Mm-hmm. And Hodgins is just not having it, dude.
He does not want to go.
Nope. Even Zach is just like, what do we do? And then you have Angela. She's just like talking about how she just hates her job. I don't even remember all the words she said. She was just like how much she feels like she draws death masks for people. Mm-hmm. And what I got from that, though, is I was just like, you love the way Dr. Goodman explains to Angela how she gives victims back their faces, their identities. For me, I was sitting there, I'm like, this is like a Mufasa moment.
Because Dr. G is a G, okay?
Yes.
Fight me on this. He's so classy.
He was so majestic, dude. He was so majestic, so much grace.
In Zach's delivery of the line, where everyone's like, why is Angela hugging Dr. Goodman? Why is she crying? And Zach's like, apparently all Angela needed to hear was her job description in a deep African-American tone.
That had me die. I was like, oh my gosh, classic Zach. But it literally pointed out my thoughts where I was like, I'm not crazy. Mufasa? Majestic? Yes.
Yeah. And he is the Mufasa of this show for the first season.
He really is. Lie. He's such a good character. Like, I really liked his job description and what he did and his role. They really respected him, you know? But, so at the end, you see that Booth finds a way to get Hodgins out of going to the donor banquet. Mm-hmm. And Angela's the one who's like, oh, yeah, I've heard of this. So you see everyone trusts her. Mm-hmm. And it's like, all right, I guess we're going to go. And so they go about it. But you look at Booth and the way he looks at Brennan.
Because she's all dolled up.
He's checking her out, but not in a, damn, she a hot piece of ass type of way. It's a, wow, you are absolutely breathtaking. Like,
my heart.
Oh my gosh. The adoration. It's just beautiful. But they're talking about basically how, you know, she trusts him. All about that trust and how, like, how did you know, you know, like, Booth was like, how'd you know I would do it? Like, how'd you know I would
keep the promise?
Through? Exactly. And she's just like, you know, I knew you wouldn't make me into a liar. And I was just like...
Yep. And he's like, you know, what did he say? He wouldn't make her into a liar, and he's like, why do you say that? And she's like, because that would make you a liar.
And you want to go to heaven.
And he's like, but you don't believe in heaven.
But you do.
Because she respects him.
Yes. But it's funny, did you also notice that chip?
Yep, he's holding a gambling chip.
He's been playing with it throughout the whole episode, just kind of tossing it around.
And you know what? So here are my thoughts.
Okay.
I'm going to get a little English teachery, but...
All right. Wikipedia.
It's a gambling chip, potentially a gambling sobriety chip.
Okay.
And to me, it seems like he does it in like a self-soothing way when it comes to taking a chance, taking a gamble. And I don't remember seeing him play with it in the last couple of episodes, but I definitely noticed it in this scene.
Like he's really just doing it when things work out.
To me, it symbolizes him kind of looking at Bones the way he is, thinking about
taking a chance,
but
or trusting her, showing like how his trust works out, or things working out when he talks to her. It's like a little enjoyment, like pat on the back, high five to himself that he does that, tosses it around. That's so cute.
So what were your overall thoughts on this episode?
Damn, that was sad.
I know. I feel like
Paul Bulger.
everyone in this episode is serving emotion. Like,
Yes.
Angela's feeling as though she's a death worker.
Everyone
like her
got...
life, her
apparently
job
there's
is morbid.
money here. You got the money man in here.
Dr. Goodman feels sympathy for Angela, tries to raise her spirits. Zach is feeling distraught. You know, Hodgins trying to hide a part of himself. Bones is being reminded of her time in foster care. And Booth is learning that Bones respects her and that he's willing to do the impossible for her.
The episode really emphasized, like, a little more about their characters on who they are and how they act and what kind of person they're trying to portray in here. And it's really showing a lot. Like, you could see, I'm assuming the chip is also kind of like a little foreshadowing, I guess, for future episodes to show, hey, this is actually a player chip, like a poker chip. And this is actually for, you know, future reference. You're going to touch up on Booth later, because they don't really talk much about Booth as much.
Not yet.
And this is more of, like, everyone else, like you said. So
yeah, we don't get really more cool background on Booth until The Man in the Fallout Shelter.
Nope.
Which is one of my favorite episodes of the first season.
That's such a good episode. I'm so excited.
I can't wait for that episode.
So excited.
The following program contains themes and images that may not be suitable for most audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, you ready to move?
I guess I am.
All right, guys. Time for our true crime segment. Time for Wikipedia. Don't forget to follow us on our social media, guys, under Panda Pig Inc. on pretty much everything. Almost everything.
Everything.
Yeah. Just follow us, guys. Come on. Follow us. Talk to us. We'll talk to you. You know. We'll try.
Hang out.
Let's hang.
We'll try and be interesting.
We're trying. We're not always interesting. But we're trying. We're too corny for life.
Yeah, but I like corn. I like corn cheese.
I like cheese corn.
Corn cheese.
Yes, Korean barbecue. We love you. All
right. I'll bring us into it. So
here we go.
The inspiration for this episode is, and I guess I'll kind of get to it in the end. When I was researching it, they didn't necessarily put a crime that inspired this episode. The writers said that what they wanted to do was include a case about the death of a young boy and how that would affect the characters.
Okay.
And they also wanted to explore more of Bones' background as being in foster care.
And everyone's background, too, since they're already hitting her in the field. So.
Yeah, so that was kind of the purpose that the writers had for this episode. So they didn't provide a particular case to me. I immediately thought of this case when I was watching this episode.
Okay. What is it?
So it's the murder of James Bulger.
James Bulger.
And I feel like I may have told you something about this case before, but I don't remember, and I don't know if you remember.
Okay.
So,
if you hear clicking, guys, sorry. I have a slideshow in front of me that Pig creates for me.
Yes.
Obviously, we'll have pictures ready for you now, but you'll hear clicking because I'm scrolling through her slideshow she makes for me as she talks about it for me.
Yes. So the first page, Miss Panda, is you're going to click on the slide after James Bulger.
Okay.
And there you'll see a photo of James Bulger.
Okay.
And another photo next to it of James Bulger's mother, Denise. Okay. And James in that same photo. Okay.
They look like two different children.
So I'm going to start off with some pretty dark foreshadowing here, okay?
Oh, God. Am I going to be ready?
Denise gives birth to her stillborn daughter at the age of 22, Kirsty. Safe to say she's heartbroken. She remembers saying to herself, "Today is the worst day of your life. It will never get worse than this."
That's sad.
2 years later, however, she gives birth to a healthy baby boy, James. Okay. She says he was very bubbly. He loved dancing to Michael Jackson videos, making people laugh. She said, "My happiest memory of him is him running towards me with his hair bouncing everywhere. He didn't walk anywhere. He'd run into your arms with a big smile on his face."
Very lively child.
Yes.
Okay.
So when James is 2 years old, 1993, February 12th, in Merseyside, I hope that I'm saying that right, England, James and his mother, Denise, go to the New Strand shopping center. So now you can go to the next page. Yep.
Okay.
So at around 3:40 p.m., Denise goes into the A.R. Tim's butcher shop on the lower floor of the center. So Denise is a pretty cautious mom.
Is this like a market?
Yes.
Like a marketplace, basically? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like a shopping center, and then there's a marketplace within it.
Okay.
She usually takes James in a shopping cart. In England, they call it a buggy.
Oh, yeah.
But this day she didn't. She was kind of in a hurry. Okay. So 3:40 p.m., she goes to the butcher shop. And in the time it takes her to pull money out of her purse, Denise realizes that James has disappeared.
What?
The moment's caught on CCTV footage at 3:42. So they go in the butcher shop at 3:40, and at 3:42, James is gone. 2 minutes.
Just a matter of 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
He got swiped.
So the police...
Oh, my God.
So obviously she goes to the police. They're freaking out. And they quickly find some low-resolution video images of James's abduction from the mall by two unidentified boys. So you can go to the next picture, and it's basically the news letter of a still image from the footage. You see that little boy is James, and there's an older boy, and they're trying to figure out where the heck is James.
Do they know how old this guy is?
Well, I will let you know.
Oh, okay.
So 2 days later, James's body is found severed at a railway embankment.
Oh my God.
A forensic pathologist says that he died before the train struck him.
I don't know how I feel about that. Because it sucks because he died, but it's good he didn't die by getting severed by a train.
This is true. These are facts.
But
it doesn't get better from here.
No.
So the breakthrough in the case came when a woman called the police on seeing slightly enhanced images of the CCTV footage of the boys on TV. She recognizes 10-year-old John Venables, who she knew skipped school with Robert Thompson, who's also 10 years old, the day of James's abduction. Okay? So,
10 years old.
Both of them are 10 years old.
Oh my God.
So, Robert Thompson is interviewed by law enforcement with a lawyer and his mother, Anne. Alrighty?
Okay.
So, a lot of this is from the interview interrogation scripts. Okay?
Okay.
So, Robert says that he and John skipped school that day for the shopping center to walk around. That he saw James with his mother there, but that he left with John to go to the library and go straight back home. So he's like, we just saw him, but we didn't do anything. Which is weird because why would you remember seeing some random child at the mall?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you just casually remember. Did they have a picture, too? Like, we're like, oh, yeah, we remember this kid.
Nope, they're just like, yeah, we saw him, but nothing.
What?
So the boys are in interviewed separately.
Oh, yeah, they're 10 years old. Obviously,
right.
They don't know any better.
So the detective implied that John is telling a different story. So Robert's like... So then Robert says that James may have followed them, but they probably lost him somewhere.
Okay.
So the detectives even point out that the boy in the video had the same jacket as Robert did. And Robert's like, jackets get sold like mine all the time.
Okay.
So why aren't you looking at John's jacket? It's more distinctive.
Okay.
So as the interview goes on,
Robert... I'm pulling teeth if I was the person interrogating.
Robert indirectly admits to being with John the whole day, and that John had James by the hand.
Okay.
So these interviews, they're over the course of a couple of days. because of how difficult it was to try to get information out of these boys.
From 10-year-old kids, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
Youths.
So they'd been together the whole day. Robert was pretty collected up until this point, but he started to get flustered. He began to sob. I never touched him.
What? Just out of nowhere?
Yeah, like they're hounding him, trying to figure out what happened to James. And he's pretty collected, but up until now he's like, oh, look, I never touched him.
Oh my God.
So Robert said that they walked around, but let James go around a church.
Okay.
Robert then says that he left John and James by the railway and nothing more. So basically Robert's story's changing throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
But the detectives ask Robert if he stole batteries.
Okay.
This makes Robert's face go red.
Oh, dang, okay.
And he won't answer to it. So they pull a classic like, look, make this easier on yourself and tell us the truth. So Robert tells the detectives that John threw bricks at James's face.
Oh my God.
He says that John hit James with a stick and a big metal thing with holes in it, which was like a big 22-pound pipe.
Oh my God.
He said that James was lying on the tracks with his eyes open while John threw batteries at his face.
Why? He's just 2 years old. What was the point of that?
Robert insists that he tried to stop John. And remember, this whole time, his mother is sitting there, hearing this. His mother's in utter shock. She cannot believe what's coming out of her son's mouth. Is she in the same room? Yeah.
Oh my God.
So Robert admits, so they found blood on Robert's shoes.
Okay.
And he says that he tried to move James off the track. And that's why he got blood on his shoes. But once he started bleeding more, he put James back down. So he's coming up with excuses for pretty much anything the cops are trying to say Robert may have been involved in.
It sounds about right.
So this whole time, Robert's being very shifty. He's putting the blame on John, justifying how he couldn't have done it. He's like, I wouldn't have hurt a baby. I have a little brother. Why would I hurt a baby?
How old is the little brother?
Like around James's age.
Okay.
So the detectives confront Robert with the evidence that they believe the batteries were shoved up James's rectum.
Oh my God.
And that they found trauma to James's genitals.
No.
So Robert again acted shocked by the accusation and pointed the finger to John. Ultimately, at the end of the interrogation, Robert says that John tried to cover up James's head with stones, but he admitted to only putting one brick on to stop all the bleeding.
What?
So Robert's story ultimately makes no sense. It's ups and downs. He's blaming John for everything.
Yeah, he's just throwing John under the bus at this point.
Mm-hmm. And so then we go to the investigation with John. John's side of the story.
Oh, God.
So John's interviewed with his mother, Susan. And he's not like Robert. Robert, the whole time, he's very intelligent, very collected. He's even countering the officer's points. Like when the officers are like...
You mean John is...
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no. Sorry. Back with Robert, the juxtaposition is that Robert's very cool and collected. He was very intelligent. He even countered the officer's points where they're like, isn't that your jacket? And he's like, anybody could have bought this jacket.
Okay.
Like a 10-year-old doesn't talk like that.
Yeah, 10-year-olds don't talk like that.
Now, John, in the opposition, is hysterical. He's emotional. He can barely get answers out. He's trying to avoid the questions.
Right.
So, John initially tries to put Robert down as the bad kid, but he ends up kind of sounding as though, like, he admires Robert's ability to be bad, you know?
What?
Where he's like, he's trying to say Robert's bad, but John kind of admires it, you know?
Like, how? Like, you have an example for that? Like,
Not necessarily, where kind of like he's saying all the things that
almost
Robert's...
like flaunting?
he's kind of saying all of the things that Robert does, like Robert skips school, Robert does this,
Robert's a cool kid.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically.
Robert's a cool dude.
Yeah.
But...
Right. So John said it was Robert's idea to miss school that day.
Okay.
Saying that they went to the park, the old railways, and a cemetery, where Robert wanted to steal flowers, but John said no. John said that Robert stole paint from the store as well.
Okay.
So detectives start to confront John with Robert's version of events. And John gets really defensive. The detectives can tell he wants to say more, but he's afraid of what his parents are going to think.
Because they're right there.
Right. So they have John's parents, reassure him that they're going to love him no matter what. No matter what he says. They just want to know what happened. They just want to know what happened. So John climbs into his mother's lap and begins to sob. And he says, "I did kill him."
That's sad.
And he says, "What about his mom? Will you tell her I'm sorry?" James's mom.
Why did you do it in the first place, you damn kid?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What got me about that part is just like, he's 10 years old, but these actions that happened to this 2-year-old boy are horrific.
But it's like you were capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Like...
So, further into the interview, John says that Robert stole paint at the toy store, that they tried to abduct another child earlier in the day, but the mother of the child caught them and took the kid. John confessed to taking James by the hand, but that it was Robert's idea to kill him. John said that they thought about looking for his mother, but that Robert suggested that they throw James in the water at the canal. John described how they tried to get James to fall in the water, and Robert threw James to the ground.
Oh my God.
As John tried to talk about what happened, further, he became hysterical. Remember, this took place over a couple of days.
Yeah.
He said he didn't want to talk about the worst bit. Quote,
"Oh my God."
So they threw bricks at James's head. Robert hit James with an iron bar. James fell on his stomach, and the boys ran away. But then they ultimately came back, took him to the railroad tracks, and,
But you said that he got killed before the railroad came.
He died at the railroad tracks, but it wasn't the train that killed him.
Yeah.
So the cops tried to talk to him about the batteries too, but John, he wouldn't speak about it. He said it was all Robert.
So did he die because of all the force, all the blunt force to his face, basically? Everything, all of that overwhelming to a 2-year-old?
So pretty much everything. So all 3 of the boys were seen by 38 different people.
Okay.
Throughout the day. Throughout James having his injuries and everything.
They saw?
And they didn't do anything.
What is that term? The bystander?
Bystanders. So 2 people tried to challenge the boys about having James, but they claimed that James was their younger brother and he was lost and they were taking him to the police station. So a few people kind of said something, but the boys were very cool and collected and were like, "Oh yeah, this is our little brother. We're taking him here."
What the heck? Literally, this kid's all beaten up.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
What I would have done is I
went with them.
Yes, absolutely. But no, this is 93. Okay. So at one point, they even took James to a pet store and they got kicked out of the store. So pretty much, it's just the worst events all happening together. So James sustained 10 skull fractures as a result of a bar striking his head. Alan Williams, the case's pathologist, stated that James suffered so many injuries, 42 in total, that none could be isolated as the fatal blow. Meaning that he had so many injuries, they couldn't even figure out which one is the one that killed him.
It was too much.
Mm-hmm. James's shoes, socks, trousers, and underpants had been removed as well. So the pathologist's report, it just found the horrendous stuff that had been done to this little kid.
So sad.
So, ultimately, the boys laid James across the railway tracks and weighted his head down with rubble, and his body was then cut in half by the train. So, the difficult part in this whole story is the fact that these little 10-year-old murderers are 10 years old, right? The most controversy came with trying to convict them.
Okay.
So they were obviously found guilty.
Yeah.
November 24th, 1993, making them the youngest convicted murderers in modern British history.
That's insane.
They were sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure until a parole board decision in 2001 determined...
Oh, I just now saw the pictures. I didn't know we were moving through.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot the other pictures. There's really... It's just the one of the boys. That's them. That's Robert on the left and John on the right. 10 years old.
That's insane.
So basically, the boys get to be incarcerated for 8 years at a home or whatever child facility, and then they get released on parole. So John's mother fights this tooth and nail and gets their detention increased to 15 years. However,
decreased or increased?
Increased to 15 years. But
John's mother or James's mother?
James's mother.
James's mother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
James's mother campaigns for longer sentences for John and Robert.
Okay, that makes sense. I thought you said John. I'm like, John's mom.
No, sorry. So, but that gets overruled, and they get released in 2001.
Oh, of course they do.
They also get the right to anonymity because they were so young when the crimes were convicted, so they get new identities paid for by the government.
Wow.
And Denise fights this and campaigns against this so much. So in 2010, John was sent to prison because he violated his parole.
Okay.
He gets released in 2013. 2017, he goes back to prison because they found child pornography on his computer. So,
okay.
I think what a lot of people try to figure out is why the heck did this happen?
Well, what about Robert? Anything happened to him?
No, nothing
There's
really
no
known about
nothing
it.
about him. Okay.
So, a little bit about the psychological profiles that were done at the time of sentencing. So, with Robert, he was later asked to reenact the crime with dolls with a psychiatrist, and he showed John as the aggressor. He would reenact everything about the crime except for the sexual parts. The psychiatrist suggested that to Robert, like the psychiatrist was talking to Robert and said, maybe the crime was sexually motivated. And Robert seemed kind of indifferent to the idea. Like, he didn't really say yes or no.
Okay.
Robert's parents, they weren't together, and his mother supposedly had a drinking problem.
Okay.
But Robert was fiercely defensive about his mom and wouldn't speak to it at all.
Okay.
All in all, the psychiatrist says that Robert was above average intelligence, exhibited no sign of mental illness or depression, but that he was currently displaying symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, after this situation, basically?
Yeah, or maybe even from his home life.
Okay.
So for John seemed to be obviously more timid than Robert. John's family believed that he was a good kid, but that he was impressionable. He had low self-esteem. He seemed to kind of be like middle child syndrome because his other siblings got more attention because they had some different needs and disabilities.
But he seemed like a normal kid.
His parents were constantly splitting up and getting back together. But they were kind of worried that he would get bullied a lot, especially hanging out with Robert. He seemed to be traumatized the most from the murder, but was found to not be mentally ill. Psychiatrists, when they were talking with him, this part makes me so sad because it just shows, like, this was a child. So they asked John if he had 3 magic wishes, what would they be? And he says, 1, to be free from the secure unit, so obviously to be free from where they were.
Yeah.
To turn the world into a chocolate factory.
Okay.
To live forever with money, no accidents or illnesses. And if he could be anyone, he'd be Sylvester Stallone's character from Rocky, or Sonic the Hedgehog because he ran fast and saved his friends.
But then he ended up taking quite a turn.
Mm-hmm. And he's the one who reoffended, which is weird, because everyone saw Robert as the leader and John as the follower.
But then it kind of switched.
Mm-hmm. So there's this YouTuber that I watched, Dr. Grande. He does a lot of mental health and personality analysis for different crimes or pop culture things. Mm-hmm. And so he had a video about this crime. And he said, you know, kind of mirrored the same thing, that like everyone was really shocked that John was the one who reoffended. Mm-hmm. But he also found it interesting that, you know, mental health professionals, when they interviewed both of the boys, they didn't find either of them to be psychopathic or anything like that. That basically they're like, nope, they're not mentally ill. They don't need any therapy. They're good. And typically with these types of crimes, people build up to this type of a crime.
Yeah, there had to be something that usually triggers them
over
to
years.
Do something like that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so it's not crazy to think that they would reoffend. It's highly likely that they would. But they were treated as if they
were young, they were just being foolish. But, you know, obviously James's mom was like, no, they were capable of this evil.
Mm-hmm. That even they had no limits. Like, nothing triggered them to stop. Even when so many people saw them, they just kept going. Doing it. And even John's is... the mental health professionals who reviewed him, they're like, no, John doesn't need therapy. And in fact, therapy could make him worse.
What?
Yeah. Isn't that, like, that's insane.
Who said that? Medical professionals?
Yeah. When they reviewed John.
That makes me angry.
So here's the aftermath, okay?
Okay.
So Denise is now 50 years old.
Sorry.
James's mother. She's remarried. She still doesn't know much about what happened that day.
They didn't tell her?
She didn't attend the trial because she was really pregnant with her second son and was told that the stress could make her miscarry.
She could lose her baby, yeah.
Yeah. So, and she doesn't want to know.
Okay, so she never finds out.
She knows essentially, but she doesn't want to know the details. Literally, every day, her husband goes through the newspaper with a thick black marker to blank out any details that she wouldn't want to know.
Yeah.
Like, she does not want to know.
I don't blame her.
And to this day, she is still, like, advocating for them to have their anonymity taken away.
Her husband, she remarried, so this is not James's father.
No.
This is a new man. Okay.
No, they got divorced.
Okay.
But in 2018, there was this Irish short drama film that was created about it.
Oh,
and
wow.
It basically it's 30 minutes long. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Detainment, and it's essentially just small flashback about with showing like Robert and John walking James around, but it's mostly the dialogue from the interviews with the detectives. So you see this reenacted by these two little boys who are phenomenal actors. I watched it to prepare for this, and it's really well done. I don't think they necessarily paint them in the most favorable light. I feel like it's pretty unbiased. You still feel horrified by what these boys did, but
the execution was done well.
Yes.
Okay.
But Denise, James's mom, did not like it. She was so upset that they made this film. But Malcolm Stevens, he oversaw the detention of the killers as the former Home Secretary's professional advisor. Mm-hmm. And he defended making the film. He says that it raises questions about the treatment of young offenders, and kind of touches on those hard topics, because this is a controversial case. They're both so young.
And people think, they need a second chance, but sometimes they do reoffend and sometimes they don't. But it's a wild card.
But yeah, and this documentary film, it was done really well, and it just gives you this unique perspective of how it's not black and white. Like, these are clearly children, these are clearly little boys, but what they did was unimaginable. And even if
hell yeah.
Even if you take John's word that he didn't participate as much as he wanted to, like, he says things like he didn't throw bricks at James, he threw them past James. But it's like, even so, you were there for the whole thing.
You let it happen.
So it's a tough case. And the reason I thought of it, because it's so eerily similar to the episode where
you showed me pictures too. There's a woman and then there's 3 kids. What am I looking at?
Yes, so that's Denise.
Okay.
And those are her boys.
Those are her boys now?
Yes.
And it looks like she wrote a book.
Yes, she wrote a book.
And it says, I Let Him Go?
Yep.
Do you know anything about that book?
That's the book. She talks about, her fight and her life and, trying to get justice for James.
Yeah.
My sources for this episode were obviously Wikipedia, Murderpedia, and an article called My Son, James Bulger. I Don't Have Energy for Anger Anymore, which is the interview with James's mother, Denise Fergus, which is her new last name.
Okay.
The YouTube video with Dr. Grande called James Bulger Murder, Mental Health and Personality, as well as the 60 Minutes from Australia called Torture and Murder of Toddler James Bulger. So those are my sources.
That's so sad.
But what reminded me of this episode was that you have a child leading another child out of the store. And this horrendous crime committed against a little boy.
And it's interesting because compared to the Bones episode, it was an older person, but the kids let it happen. In this situation, the kids did it, but the adults let it happen.
Yep.
That's so sad.
Yes. And when you read more into her article, you get so much more background as to what it was like for her and her everyday struggle, where she still does not believe that these boys should have been given the leniency that they did, considering what they did.
I mean, yeah, that was her child. Granted, these 2 are children as well, but it's like they were obviously capable of it. So it's just, that's not okay. That's not okay.
I think the government saw this and were like, these are children. And it's a controversial situation. But clearly, kids, you don't commit that kind of crime, and
you
then just never do anything again.
Evil of crime and not.
Yeah.
Wow, that's sad. That poor kid.
I know.
I'm so sorry, sweet child.
That's a rough one. But instantly when I saw this episode, this is the case that I thought of. Was just the idea, because they kind of touch on this, where in the episode of Bones, the juvenile prosecutor is talking to her and is saying, this child very well could have murdered.
Yeah, they bring that up. They bring that up for sure.
Be harder on him.
Yeah.
And they do. Kids can kill. And it's the most horrifying thing, because you can't imagine innocence and evil.
You wouldn't think they would do such a thing, but it happens. It definitely happens. And that's sad.
Yeah.
That really sucks.
So that's the murder of James Bulger.
Rest in peace, little guy.
And remember that he was a very bubbly, happy child who loved Michael Jackson and making people laugh.
Such a pure little kid.
That will be his legacy.
Yes, that will be his legacy.
So that's kind of about it for this episode.
Yep. Hope you guys are all right. Made it this far.
Hug your pets. Hug your family. Stay in your... If you have children...
I'm sorry. All I'm thinking of is that... Was it a Vine? Hide your wives. Hide your kids.
Hide your kids. Hide your wives.
Was it a news or Vine? I don't remember.
No, it was from the news.
Yeah,
from the news. It was much earlier than Vine, but...
Yes.
It was
I just feel like they used it in Vine later.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's how I remember it.
Opposite. Hug your family, hug your kids, hug your pets, and if you have children...
please be careful.
Be careful, but like, even if they're older, that's when they need you the most.
Yes, definitely. But
be involved in your kids' lives.
Pay attention.
What's going on.
Pay attention to your surroundings. Pay attention to what's going on at home.
And if you see a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old walking down the street,
and it looks sus,
do something.
Yeah.
Call somebody.
Go with them.
Don't pick them up and take them in your car because then you look sus.
Now you're sus.
But call the police.
Do the right thing.
Do something.
Please do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
All right, guys. Well, that'll be it for this episode.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah, hope you guys hang with us next week.
The next episode, which is The Man in the Wall.
Man in the Wall.
We will catch you later.
Catch y'all guys later.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.
Next week on The Heart and the Bones.
Shin?
No, not the shin. Is it the shin?
Wait, what was the parts again? Sorry, I wasn't
between the knee and the foot.
It's a shin.
Okay, well, either way, something along those lines. It gets snapped, and then she starts she's screaming, and she gets pulled in.